Hi, my name is Brian Cheek. I teach seventh grade math at Centerville Junior High School here in Centerville, Indiana. We're in East Central Indiana, about 10 miles from the Ohio border, right off of I-70, just a little south of I-70, okay? I have been here, this is my it's my 21st year in the Centerville school system. I taught 9 years at the high school level, and then this is my 12th year here at Centerville Junior High School as a seventh grade math teacher, okay? I'm just going through your questions here. Question 2, why did I start a career in education? Well, I've always liked working with youth. I was a youth director at my church for 5 years before I got into this public school education thing. And I really like kids, and I've just kind of drifted. I actually teach some college classes too. So from age 20 down to seventh grade is the lowest. I joke with my wife that I'll be a fourth grade teacher before I retire. I'm not going to, because elementary kids scare me. But anyway, seventh grade's a really good, and I really like the whole process of teaching kids things that they don't know. I love math. I really like teaching seventh graders math. A lot of times that we start laying the foundations for more complex and the hard stuff. And I like just providing a good foundation for them to go on in high school. I also like to tell stupid jokes, and their seventh grade seems about right. They're too dumb for high school, and they're not very sophisticated. Sometimes they're a little too sophisticated, but stand-up comedy, people voluntarily come to hear your jokes, but in school they have to come. So, I've got a captive audience, so that's good. All right. So the question 3, if you could have a job, what would it be and why? I've thought about this a little, and it kind of depends on if I could start over and start something from the beginning, I probably would have kind of been more of like a forensic scientist, forensic mathematician, just kind of sitting down in a spreadsheet and trying to, track, criminal activity through the numbers or whatever. Kind of like, how they got Al Capone for income tax evasion, kind of being a number cruncher, but catching bad guys through math. I mean, I don't know if you've watched there was a series called Numbers, where Charlie was a mathematician at Caltech, and his brother Don, recruited him with the FBI, and he used it. That's a really cool series, and so I've watched all of those and everything. Now, if you're asking if I could change jobs now, I don't know. I'm not sure I know how to do anything but teach math now to seventh graders. I think that's all I know how to do now. At least I've gotten fairly good at it over the years. But if I change now, my wife she's a smart person, and we could probably set up a small business together, or maybe a consulting business. That would be kind of fun. Okay. All right. Anyway, question 4, how are kids different now than 30 years ago? There's a lot. It's hard for me to gauge that. I kind of think back to my experiences 30 years ago, because I guess, 30 years ago, I was working with kids, and I was in a church setting. But it's hard to gauge, because, 30 years ago, I was very different than I am today. So I guess one thing that I've noticed is that in some ways they're sort of forced to be more more street smart than they used to be. There's a lot of sex, drugs, rock and roll. that there's a lot of issues that we face with with technology, and I don't think the family is strong. I don't think the family base in general is as strong as it was 30 years ago. So the kids have to navigate a lot of life situations that are a lot more complicated than they used to be. And that's kind of made them street smart. And it's kind of made it, this kind of segues into question number 5, how is teaching different now than 30 years ago? there's less of a respect for authority than there was 30 years ago, but there's more of an openness to actually develop sort of a, rather than just rapport, but just go a little bit deeper in the relationship and really, I guess bottom line is if the kid trusts me and I convince them that I really want what's best for them and I'm trying to do them good and I'm trying to be a helpful part of their lives, I'm trying to contribute positively to their lives, and they trust me that really is my motivation, and they really and I communicate that, and I just kind of live that out in front of them and with them, then they'll respond. If they don't trust you, they'll just shut down on you. I don't think 30 years ago that, in youth group it was different, that was kind of the job, but in education, I don't know that was the case 30 years ago. I think you could just kind of play the authority card, and you weren't, the teacher was a stranger. One example is like if I run into a kid at the grocery store, a student or a parent or whatever in the grocery store, I think 30 years ago, it was like, oh, what? You have a life that's not part of school? It just kind of freaked them out that they'd see me in a different context. And I think there's a lot less of that now. There's just, I think it's just it's more integrated with the rest of your life. And they're not, if I see them in the grocery store, and I live in a small town, and especially this happens with former students all the time, but it happens with present students. We run into each other, and it's just not, seventh graders, it still freaks them out a little bit, but less so than it was 30 years ago. So I think that's kind of a convoluted sort of question 4 and 5 kind of smushed together, but I hope that I appreciate what you're doing here, and you want to find out. You're giving teachers giving me a chance to just kind of think through some things and share that with you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I know I'm doing this for free earbuds, but it's kind of cool anyway. I'm glad you made this a condition. Anyway, let's go. Let's finish this out. What would you tell someone right now that is thinking about becoming a teacher? I would say really, really think about it. It's a little different in Indiana. We had, with all the federal money, all the COVID money, and just kind of the federal government just kind of opening all kinds of funds and throwing money at the states. Teacher pay was a huge issue in Indiana. There were rallies, there was a lot of tension, and then all of a sudden with this budget that was just passed within this last year, just poof, all of a sudden, hey, we're getting more money and we're actually paying kids, and there's a push to get, Indiana has weird laws, but we can't quite do it, but to make the minimum salary $40,000 for a starting teacher. So that, I would think the pay, before I would, and I think there's still something to think about, because I'm not sure if the environment's going to change or do a 180 or whatever. It's changing all the time. But I say you need to be realistic about how much you're making, and what your life is going to look like, money-wise. And then with the technology, this is another, difference is that it's a lot more of a lifestyle. I've got kids emailing me at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and I try to. You've got to draw. You've got to really think about where you're going to draw your line. It's like, I'm not going to answer emails after this time, or you've just got to show the kids that this is the line. My job is not my entire life, and it's really, I tell you, I've gotten sucked into it. It really is a lifestyle. You can't help that to a certain extent, but you've got to draw a line somewhere and say, okay, kids, I love you, I care about you, and I'll bust my rear end and lose sleep over trying to do what's best for you, but I have boundaries, I have lines, and this is where the line is. And so you've got to, as a young teacher, you really need to figure out where you're going to draw the line and really draw it, and just say, this is a non-negotiable. You're going to lose your sanity if you don't do that. You've got maybe 2 or 3 years in teaching, and you're going to be burnt out. Another thing is, if you have a choice, sometimes you just have to take a job. This is the only job I can get, and you take it. But in my experience, the people that you work with, you really, as you're interviewing, if you can get to know them, this is hard, and when you're just trying to land a job, but relationships between colleagues, it's just so, at Centerville Junior High, I mean, I respect and heck, I like my colleagues, but it's really driven by respect. I really appreciate what they do, and there's a lot of mutual respect for everybody, and it's just fantastic how well we work together. And I've never considered leaving. I mean, it's just, why would I? So anyway, that's important. That's something to think about, but boundaries is another thing. Okay. Anyway, so last question. What is one thing to help kids learn better? Oh my gosh, one thing. I really think if I could wave a magic wand, I would just have them have a good family situation. I mean, there's nothing that I can do about that really. But I would love for them to have parents that care about them and love them and just provide all the foundation that's already there. So the schools wouldn't have to be, we're kind of surrogate parents in some ways. And that some of that's necessary, but there's a lot of that nowadays. And that's just, if I could wave a magic wand and change that, I would do that. I guess a more practical, if you want to just talk kind of wonky policy kind of thing, because that's not the case, we have to, it's kind of like the whole debate about police officers, whether defund the police and move the money to different funds. But I mean, kind of like police is more than just law enforcement. Police kind of have to be social workers in some respects, and the schools we're kind of doing the same thing. We're sort of being surrogate parents, and it's not a good role for us to be in, but if we have to be in that role, I mean, we've got to fund our counselors, and we need more trained people in counseling. We've got one guidance counselor that's serving our junior high and both of our elementaries, I think, and she's just she can be spread really thin. So I guess that's the kind of one practical thing I can do. Okay. And I realized I did this. I kind of pretended that COVID didn't exist throughout this, but for the most part, but obviously that's one difference when you have kids, going in and out of quarantine. And that's really kind of the technology kind of going back to how is teaching different. The technology 30 years ago from between now and today, sorry, back to question 4, the technology is just way different. We're a one-to-one computing school. All the kids 7 through 12, and I think 4 through 6 is on the way. They all have laptops. And now I've changed my expectations. It's kind of harder. I mean, when kids are absent, you don't wait for them to get back and then they get back and what was the assignment, and you give them the makeup assignment and they have, a couple days to get it done or whatever. I expect them, if they're home, unless it's an extended illness, I expect them to get their homework done. And now we're on a different schedule, so they always have 2 days to do their homework no matter what. But if they just miss school for a day, they can get online, they get their assignment done online. So that's way different than 30 years ago. That's just logistically, it's a game. The technology has just been a game changer for us. So, okay. I hope that's kind of what you guys were going for. Again, I appreciate the offer of 50 free earbuds. That'll definitely help since we have computers and I create videos, and that they watch them and they have to answer questions. The video interrupts. We use Edpuzzle, and it's a really good deal. And if they have class time and they can get that done, they definitely need their earbuds, because I don't want to hear like 25 of my voice speaking at the same time. That's just too creepy. So anyway, that's it. I hopefully gave you a feel answering all those questions. Really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to getting my earbuds in the mail. All right. Take care.